combining 18 and 19, and really not much happens plot-wise in these two chapters. And even the Ongi Kuden, which is Nichiren's oral lecture notes, was only 4 pages, pretty short. These two chapters really go with chapter 17 as a whole, talking about from our practice we get these wonderful merits. And it builds upon the messages in chapter 17, as we talked last month about hope, and that we receive great benefits from our practice in all aspects of our lives, from worldly needs all the way up to self-realization. And wherever we joyfully express our trust and confidence, faith, the Buddha appears in a treasure tower appears, and it is the treasure tower. And also the 4 depths of faith in the 5 stages of practice. Chapter 18, the Buddha is speaking to Maitreya, who is foremost in compassion. And then in chapter 19, introduces a new character, which is Bodhisattva ever diligent. And there's various different translations of this Bodhisattva's name. The Kosei publishing threefold Lotus Sutra that we use currently for the study program, published in 2018, says the name is ever diligent. The previous publication by Kosei in 1975 says it's ever zealous. Hurwitz's translation was ever persevering. Gene Reeves' translation is constant effort. The late Reverend Niwano is constant endeavor. And the Ongi Kuden is constant exertion. And this idea of being diligent and zealous and persevering, effort, endeavor, and exertion, and never quitting, being ever present, constant, represents the 3rd of the 10 degrees of faith, which is assiduousness or exertion. And you may recognize the word assiduousness from the term gongyo, which is assiduous practice. So the major themes of this chapter, of course, we just talked about as endurance, effort, diligence in our own practice. And in chapter 19, we get into the idea of sharing the Dharma. So 18 is about our own practice, and 19 is about what we need to do to share our practice. Also in these chapters, this idea that the Lotus Sutra is so wondrous and mysterious that only one single thought, one instant of joy is needed to receive great benefits across all aspects of our lives. And Nichiren wrote, "What other sutra teaches that incalculable merit accrues to one who arouses even a single thought of willing acceptance, or the 50th person who rejoices upon hearing it? Other sutras do not claim such merit for even the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, or 10th hearer, let alone the 50th. Nichiren taught that no practice could be easier than spontaneously rejoicing on hearing the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren believed that far from excluding the ignorant, it is precisely because the Lotus Sutra is so profound that it can save living beings of any capacity whatsoever, citing Zanran's remark, quote, "The more true the teaching, the lower the capacity of the persons it can bring liberation." And as we've talked a lot, that this joy, these benefits, span the 4 siddhantas, or the 4 aims, from worldly benefit to transformational benefits, improving ourselves, therapeutic benefits, remediating things that we feel like need to be worked on, and finally awakening. And as we've said about the 4 siddhantas, these are not necessarily a ladder or a linear progression, that we can circle around through all of these benefits and all of these points of view at any time in our practice. And these merits are undiminished as the Dharma flows from one person to another, just like a candle lights other candles without diminishing itself. So the benefit to the first person and the benefit to the 50th person are the same without getting less. And also these merits are reciprocal and flow back to you because we're all interconnected. So helping another person is helping yourself, and so on. And then we really get to the real meat of this. And seeing another person happy, we become happy too. So joyfully sharing the merit is loving kindness, metta. And I think really what was very profound about these chapters for me was this idea of transformation and purification, the real benefits of our practice. In purifying the six sense organs, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And it's another example how the Lotus Sutra celebrates a positive and abundant view of life and being engaged in life. Leave the monastery, go out into the world and practice and teach and share, rather than the traditional Buddhist view, which rejects the sense organs and input as illusions, seeking detachment, viewing nirvana as they reduce the body to ashes and annihilate consciousness. So traditionally it was this idea of emptiness, which could be taken in a nihilistic way. And the Lotus Sutra flips that and says, no, take it in an abundant, inclusive way. Being alive in this moment is everything. And having, then Thich Nhat Hanh says in his book, Open Heart, having received this great merit, with our mind faculty transformed, any thought we have, any concept we entertain, all have the flavor of the Buddha Dharma. Nichiren commented, the purification of the mental faculty, quote, if they, expounders of the Lotus, teach the works of worldly affairs, treatises on political science or enterprise, all of these will be in harmony with the true Dharma. That's what the meaning of a wheel-turning king is, by the way. And he continues, the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra hold in essence that all dharmas are produced from the mind. Excuse me, I lost my place. To illustrate, they say that the mind is like the great earth, while the grasses and trees that grow from it are like the dharmas. Not so with the Lotus Sutra. It teaches that the mind is itself the great earth. While the grasses and trees that grow from it are like the dharmas. Not so with the Lotus Sutra. It teaches that the mind is itself the great earth, and the great earth is precisely the grasses and the trees. The sutras preached before it say that clarity of mind is like the moon, and that purity of mind is like a flower. Not so with the Lotus Sutra. It teaches that the moon is the mind and the flower is the mind. Grandmaster Juri Tiantai said, were the mind to give rise to all phenomena, that would be a vertical relationship. Were all phenomena to be simultaneously contained within the mind, that would be a horizontal relationship. Neither horizontal nor vertical will do. It is simply that the mind is all phenomena, and all phenomena are the mind. This relationship is subtle and profound in the extreme. It can neither be grasped conceptually nor expressed in words. Therefore, it is called the realm of the inconceivable. This perspective, that the one contains the all and the all contains the one, or the three truths, revalorizes the world, not as a realm of delusion, but as the very locus of enlightenment. The aim of our practice, then, is not to recover a primal purity, but to manifest the Buddha wisdom even amid ignorance and delusion. Nichiren writes that the true path lies in the realities of this world. Nichiren taught that there is no Buddha Dharma apart from one's everyday reality. One's ordinary affairs, whatever they may be, is the place of practice. And by faith in the Lotus Sutra, one brings the wisdom and compassion of the Dharma to all aspects of their lives. So, merit and benefit. There is a phrase from the Ongi Kuden that says, the word benefit means the reward that is represented by the purification of the six sense organs. Thus, the word benefit means to attain Buddhahood in one's present form. And you might ask me, well, why do we have a kitten as a picture? Well, it's like, who doesn't like kittens? And I hope I made you smile. So there's no other reason than that. But the kitten's looking up and going, I think I just want some food. But also, merit can mean realization and transformation. So merit, benefit, realization, transformation, it's this purification. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the right, there we go. It's this purification of the six sense organs. Now, I did get a question before today from our sister Susie, who's not feeling well, so she's not able to be with us today. she asked some questions after reading chapter 18 and 19. Why is so much importance given to material gains that may be received? And why is there so much importance about how people look? Does that sort of presume that humans covet such things? And her other question was, when we become reborn, we are as a newborn baby, we start anew. And I wanted to really have this question discussed early in the discussion today, because I think it's kind of getting the elephant out of the room straight away. This whole passage on extraordinary physical beauty and unimaginable wealth is a bit, or okay, a lot of an eye roll. It sounds like a Tony Robbins seminar. One could certainly think the writers are appealing to some very vapid, base set of desires. No question people then and now covet such things. This is not a new phenomenon. It's just that the whole social media world of the Kardashians and influencers shows us that. And yes, the writers were appealing to all types of people at all stages in their lives. The material benefits might be considered similar to how you would train a dog. Like when the dog sits, you give him a treat, and so that they then know that, oh, this behavior is good. So yes, we are appealing to some baser needs, but we need to look beyond that, that there's an entire spectrum of benefits across one's life, from material to spiritual. I encourage everyone to rewatch Reverend McCormick's interview that he did for Carving the Divine TV about the four Siddhantas. The link is on our homepage right at the top of the page. And it's also worth considering Maslow's hierarchy of needs is another useful model for this. It's hard to think about self-actualization when one is uncertain when their next meal comes from. I personally went to my first Soka Gakkai meeting because a pretty girl said I could come over to her house after the meeting for dinner, like the movie we were talking about earlier, The Last Detail. So that's how I got into this practice. Now, looking at this a bit deeper, it's a question of transformation and awakening. And think of this as a journey. So reread chapter 7, the parable of the conjured city, that these are all necessary steps to get us toward the ultimate goal, which is becoming a Buddha, Manjisa Zeinen. The Dhammapada, verse 374 says, fully knowing the arising and passing of the aggregates, one attains joy and delight. For those who know, this is the deathless. We've all been talking so far that the present is not a fixed, static, unchanging thing. The present moment is a continuum, a flow state, a process. This is quite hard to know, but with practice, again, the message of chapter 18, be diligent, we can become more aware of when we are in the now and when we are not. Once we are fully in the present, we experience the deathless, which is a synonym for nirvana, or the moment. The deathless is called the deathless because the moment has no beginning and no ending. We are content to let things be because we recognize that everything is unfolding due to its causes and conditions, cause and effect, most of which we cannot perceive and are only personal if we make them so. This then is the meaning of the third noble truth: suffering has an end. In our Shodaigyo practice, we frequently use the guide phrases, every in-breath a new beginning, every out-breath a letting go, a letting be. And from our Sacred Services book, I understand that each and every moment is another opportunity for me to practice the Eightfold Path and the Six Perfections. And give me a moment, I need to find one more quote from our service book. May we purify our minds, limit our desires, learn to be content, feel free to experience the quiet, unassuming joys of life, and learn to abandon all attachments formed in the mind. So these are all the benefits that we're talking about as we go forward. This idea of rejoicing, what does that mean? Hearing it even for an instant, rejoice. This is from the Lotus Sutra, chapter 18. So just hear it for an instant. And so this is so wonderful, amazing. Rejoice. What more could I ask for? This is the best thing ever. And then the next idea is expressing joy in the fact that they will inevitably become Buddhas, eternally endowed with the three bodies. This is the Ongikuden. So this is like this whole practice that we do. It's amazing, and it's such a happy place to be. Now, a cautionary note in this, and it's from Buddhism for Today by Nikkyo Niwano, page 283. However, even if the object of faith is the most perfect in the world, its effect cannot appear in a person if he or she assumes the wrong attitude in believing and have a low degree of faith. So what does that mean? And this is from Nichiren's On Repaying Debts of Gratitude. The great teacher Zhu-En wrote a work in 10 volumes entitled Praising the Profundity of the Lotus Sutra, in which he praised the Lotus Sutra, but the great teacher Dengyo criticized it, saying, though he praises the Lotus Sutra, he destroys its heart. If we consider these examples carefully, we will realize that among those who read the Lotus Sutra and sing its praises, there are many who are destined for the hell of incessant suffering. Even men like Jia Sheng and Zhu-En were actually slanderers of the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra. He continues in the Blessings of the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren says, in the end, it is as the great teacher Dengyo meant when he said, though he praises the Lotus Sutra, he destroys its heart. We ourselves must be alert and on guard for fundamentalism and dogmatism in our practice. As the passage we recited this morning said, monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen, or some other wise people, whether old or young, hear this sutra and rejoice in it. One's experience and awakening are not defined by which religion they belong to, what sect they join, what lineage or network or group they belong to, what temple they join. One's experience and awakening come from within, from a sincere moment of joy. The whole idea that one's lineage, network, sect, or group is important is all stage 3 thinking. Think about the 6 stages of faith that we talked about 2 years ago. Thinking that, and this is all this like expedient means, just like the conjured city in chapter 7. At some point, you got to go beyond this idea of my tribe. At some point, one needs to continue the journey, to go out, leave the monastery, go out into the world. And one will not awaken until they leave the Dharma assembly and go someplace else. And this is, we talked about this earlier, but this is the slide from the Dhammapada. Fully knowing the arising and passing of the skandhas, aggregate, the 5 aggregates, one attains joy and delight. For those who know, this is the deathless. This idea of fully knowing. And of course, the 5 aggregates were form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. And the aggregates were how the Buddha identified and categorized our experience. Our practice is intended to develop mindfulness skills so that we can see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and understand our experience of each of these categories. When we can do this, we will be as close as we can get to the actual present. We experience the past or the future as fabrications or mental formations. The purpose of considering the aggregates is a framework. It's just a model to help ourselves bring ourselves into intimate, direct, and immediate observation of our experience, to come fully into the present. As Reverend McCormick says, become fully liberated and fully engaged. This is the transformation of purifying the 6 sense organs, and this is the big benefit of our practice. However, it takes work. Meditating is for the mind what going to the gym is for our bodies. If you want to be free of suffering, to be awake, you have to do the work. You have to take this good medicine and not worry if it will cure you. This is probably the 3rd most important message of the entire Lotus Sutra, following after, of course, the eternal lifespan of the Buddha and Yui Butsu Yobutsu. Do the work and share with others. As we have been studying, the present is not a fixed, static, unchanging thing. The moment is a continuum, a flow state. So let's now jump into what the purification of the 6 sense organs are. It's purifying the 6 sense organs, your eye, nose, ears, tongue, body, and mind. And we actually could think of this somewhat as equivalent to superpowers when we can hear at this level and see everything. It's like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. The Lotus Sutra celebrates a positive, abundant view of life and being engaged in life. It's not we're trying to become extinct or to consider that our sense organs are somehow illusory or not real. They are. What we are seeing is there. It's just like this superpower that we have. The Lotus Sutra presents this magnitude of abundance and wholeness. We see things we couldn't see before. We see the true reality of life as it really is. We're able to hear deeply. We can hear the birds singing. Their singing are the words of the sutra. We hear the wind blowing in the trees. The wind blowing, that sound is the words of the Buddha. All these sights and sounds are the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is more than a mere text or a scripture. It's a description of an awakened state. It's like an ultimate koan itself. This idea of total situational awareness. We become aware of everything. And I wanted to bring this out too, that sometimes we think like, oh, the Shoten Zenjin, which are the Buddhist gods, they protected me. I was driving down the street and I decided to move the car to the other lane and then some box fell in front of me, or something happened and wow, thank the Shoten Zenjin for looking out for me. This idea of superpower awareness, your sense organs become so powerful, you have such good situational awareness, consciously and unconsciously, I think, are how you see all the aspects of causality, and then it manifests. And of course, if we can't explain it, we sometimes like to think that we ascribe it to external powers. But I really think that this is the benefit of being protected, is our awareness of what's happening. Now, all that said, there is a disclaimer that we need to talk about with this, is that this increased awareness and sensitivity can at first be startling and at times overwhelming, but the sutra does promise us without harming our sense faculties. When we know the Dharma, so it's like, this is like the fine print on a medicine, and we know the Dharma is medicine, so we must take our practice in medicine seriously. Our newfound sense organ skills can be overwhelming. Noises can seem louder, images can seem stronger and clearer, more disturbing perhaps. What we used to accept can now seem overwhelming and unwanted. I want to ask a question for the group to think about. Which one of our meditation superpowers, and if you've been coming on our Thursday or Wednesday Shodaigyo sessions, you'll know I speak about this a lot. Which one of our meditation superpowers protects us from overwhelming sensory overload? Equanimity. It's one of the 7 factors of awakening. But the sutra promises us protection and without harming their sense faculties. Now I want to, again, as this caveat says, the sutra itself isn't protecting you. You acting in accordance and alignment with the teachings described in the sutra is what's protecting you. You acting according to the Eightfold Path protects you. The sutra itself is not some other power. As I talked about earlier, the sutra, it's a description of the awakened state. So the purification of the 6 sense organs is deeply listening. And I'm sure you've all heard the old axiom, it's pretty famous in the business world, that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you talk. Chanting is meditation. I've heard once someone say, well, chanting isn't meditation. We chant. Well, that's not true. Chanting is one of the 5 kinds of meditation. And meditation is prayer. And prayer is listening. It's observing. Our stance when chanting, praying, meditating, is not asking or beseeching an external power for gain. Our stance when we're chanting is listening deeply and fully with our entire being, all 6 sense organs observing. And when our meditation stance becomes this posture of deep listening, observation, we can hear the eternal Buddha speak, guiding us into paths we've never imagined, to see wonders and glories that we've never seen before. We enter this state of perfect transformation. Those who keep the Dharma Flower Sutra will become utterly pure in body, like clear lapis lazuli, and all living beings will delight to see them. Moreover, they will be like clear, bright mirrors in which every form and image can be seen. These bodhisattvas will see everything in the world within their own pure bodies, from chapter 19. Again, those who come on Wednesday and Thursday will recognize this guide phrase that we use in our meditation. Breathing in, I see myself as still water. Breathing out, I reflect all that is. And the sutra says in chapter 19, and we chanted it earlier, the minds of these people will become pure, lucid, sharp, and unclouded. And as Michael talked about in his Dharma talk last week, looking deeply inside yourself, you will see the entire universe in this moment. Looking deeply at any one thing, you will see the entire universe. Stopping and seeing. This is meditating. Shikan, calming and insight, shamatha and vipassana. We develop these meditation skills using our whole being as one, becoming single-minded with all of our 6 sensory organs, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mind. This is what we talk about integration and purifying. We become stable and calm, stop, and able to observe and see things clearly. No judgments, no criticisms, no having to decide whether we like it or not like it. We just see it. And again, on Wednesday and Thursday, we've been learning the skills that if and when our mind wanders, which it will, because that's just what minds do, notice it wandered, notice where it wandered to, smile and congratulate yourself for noticing, for you have woken up. And then return to the sounds of the daimoku or the sense of your breath and simply begin again. And whether your mind wanders 1 time or 10 times or 100 times, you simply begin again, 1 time, 10 times, or 100 times. And in this space of deep listening, we hear, we are made whole, and we find freedom. As I said earlier from Reverend McCormick, when observing any one thing, you see the entire universe, the unborn and undying interconnected nature of everything, the eternal Buddha. Hearing deeply, we hear the music of the birds singing, the wind in the trees, the sounds of the words and teachings of the Lotus Sutra. Now, the 4 fearlessness of the Bodhisattva. Because they proclaim these teachings, they will have no fear before the multitude. Sharing and teaching. Our responsibility as bodhisattvas of the earth. As we grow in our practice and receive personal benefit, there comes a time when we must make efforts to share with others. Our practice is no longer just about ourselves. Now, I want to take a moment and just say that when Michael and I started this in 2016, it was just Michael and I in our dining room together, and it slowly grew. I think our first guest was Rusbe, and now we're getting more people. We've got 25 people on today, plus spouses or partners that are with us present, and we've grown. And Michael and I have been so careful not to ever say that we have to do the sharing and teaching and we've got to grow. We never want NBA to feel pressured or folks to feel obligated that we need people to come and grow and new members and quotas and goals and campaigns. We're never going to be about that. Now, that said, this message is critically important. A whole chapter is devoted to it. Teaching and sharing is important. And I want to share my personal experience that I think I find this verse highly aspirational. Because they proclaim these teachings, they will have no fear before the multitude. You may be surprised to hear that I am terrified every time I give one of these talks. And before guiding the Wednesday night in Thursday morning Shodaigyo, or leading the 1 hour Odaimokus, or doing recordings for Insight Timer, I'm absolutely terrified. Right now, I'm still anxious and nervous talking to you right now, to the point that Michael and I talk about it a lot. I don't know if I want or can be a formal teacher or priest or pastor, whatever you want to call it. It's just really scary. So I get it. If the fact that wanting to share the teaching or talk to someone else about this practice is so scary that you don't do it, I completely understand. And I wish I had an answer for you that it goes away, but it hasn't gone away for me. I just get a little more used to it. So it doesn't quite stop me from working. The other thing that's sort of, if we really scratch below the surface, this idea of fearlessness, we recognize that fear is a prime mover for all of us. Our first realization when we are born is that we need to do something, breathe, and we depend on others just to survive. That we all of a sudden feel super alone. And fear drives us as we all get older. Fear is probably the underlying all dysfunctional things and behaviors in the world. To see others, to really deeply see others, is to see their fear. And that is scary because it reminds us of our own fears. This inner strength to face our fear and see the fear in others is the fearlessness of the Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. And you will develop more power to do that, more strength over time. The term fearlessness derives from a Sanskrit word, I can't pronounce it, Vaisharadva, and here implies dauntless courage and unwavering confidence. It is regarded as one of the virtues of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Becoming fearless is one of the 7 benefits described in Chapter 2, along with virtue, wisdom, power, fearlessness, meditation, concentration, and liberation. And one of my all-time favorite quotes from a science fiction book written by Frank Herbert, Dune: "I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain." So part of our transformation, this purification of the 6 sense organs process, is the integration of unpleasant and uncomfortable aspects of ourselves, fear. We need to give ourselves permission not to be perfect, to accept that sometimes, perhaps many times, we experience hate, disappointment, anger, craving, fear, aggressiveness. When we repress or deny these states, we often get sick, depressed, and anxious. This is really important if you take nothing away from this presentation today. Bono Soko Bodai is not fulfilling our earthly desires. It is integrating our afflictions, which includes all parts of ourselves, good, bad, and neutral. An important aspect of our practice, observing, listening, stopping and seeing, is giving ourselves the permission to see these afflictions, our bonos, without judgment or criticism, to tenderly hold them like a suffering, crying baby, and comfort them until they stop crying. Simply seeing our fears, our discomforts, our hates is very freeing. This is the meaning of Bono Soko Bodai, not that you're going to get stuff. The key to purifying our 6 sense organs to transformation is embracing our afflictions, not dropping them or trying to crush, subdue, or get rid of them, viewing our meditation practice as embracing. The whole idea of single-mindedness or single-mindedly is making one, making whole, integrating. Good, the bad, the ugly. Meditation is a practice of making whole, of integrating all the various piece parts of our biological being into a whole, integrated, focused, calm, peaceful state. All our piece parts are unified working together for a specific purpose, a specific intention. Meditation trains our little mind, our brain, and body to function as one. Meditation builds the mental muscles of concentration, insight, friendliness, and equanimity. So what are the four fearlessnesses of the Bodhisattva? It is a fearlessness in teaching. It is the fearlessness in seeing someone's capacities and skillfully teaching those capacities. Being willing to share. Seeing the fear in other people and not letting it scare you, and then seeing how skillfully you can take the teachings and apply it to their fear so that they can move forward. You are fearless in resolving doubts. Seeing doubts in another doesn't cause you to have your own doubts. Or if it does, it doesn't sway you. And you're fearless in answering questions, helping people. Now, there's four fearlessnesses of a Buddha. There's fearlessness in declaring oneself to be enlightened to the truth of phenomena. Fearlessness in proclaiming oneself to have extinguished all desires and illusions. Fearlessness in proclaiming oneself to have elucidated the obstacles to Buddhist practice and enlightenment. And fearlessness in declaring oneself to have clarified the way of liberation from the world of suffering, and thus the way of attaining emancipation. And now when I read this, I'm like, wow, that's pretty intense. That's like so far from where I am. So I was talking, well, how can I look at this in a way that makes sense to me? And I said, well, let's not just say, well, that mountain's too big to climb, so I'm not even going to try. Let's look at this as an affirmation. And when we use this in our practice, so the first one is, I can awaken to the truth of all phenomena. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I can extinguish my greed, anger, and ignorance. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I can make a difference in the world by sharing Buddhist practice with others. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I can realize the way of attaining freedom from suffering. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I can find my true home. My body is my home. Breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. So what does 18 and 19 mean to us is have trust and confidence in the process. You will receive unimaginably great benefits in all aspects of your life, material to spiritual. Be diligent in your practice and never give up. You have to do the work. Be diligent in that. That's the message of 18. Share the teachings as best you can. Go ahead and be fearless and let yourself fully see someone else and share your heart with them. That's the message of 19. And the benefits of sharing do come back to you. They never diminish. They grow from the first person to the 50th person. And trust that deep, genuine, lasting transformation of all of your 6 sense organs, a complete integration of all the fractured parts of yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, will happen. And that you are not alone. With the first breath you took as a baby and the fear that you left your mother and you felt like, I'm by myself, that's the illusion. The reality is that the entire universe is reflected in your being. Everything is within the meditation container of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. And everything we talked about tonight is contained here. And I hope that this service encourages you to go out and chant more, to meditate more. And with that said, you can listen to it again on YouTube. You know, what's really interesting is not every time, but so now we're done. We're up through 19 plus the 3 from the introductory section. So we've done 22 discussions now, and we're going to do we're going to combine a couple more. So we've technically got 9 left, which will probably be done in about 6. Every time we go forward, I read this guy like, oh, this chapter is not much happening in this chapter, you know. Like, you know, we had like chapter 2 and 3, you know, and then chapter 16, you know, the big ones. And these two, and even though Reverend Cornick said, well, we go and combine. There's not a lot going on. Like they said, not a lot of plot happens in these two chapters. But the more we got into it, this actually was my favorite one of all of the ones that we've done. And I sent most of you, I think you got the link to the On Being podcast, which was a Christian pastor. And I listened to it and I sent it immediately to Michael and I said, my God, you got to listen to this. This is exactly what this is exactly what I'm talking about and been preparing for. And so the synchronicity of hearing, right? The idea that we're now going to be so wide open and hear that we things start to come to us that like, wow, that's really validating. And that's from a Christian. You don't need to be, so you're Nichiren Shoshu. Okay, that's cool. So you're Soka Gakkai. Oh, okay, that's cool. So you're Nichiren Shu. Okay, that's cool. And then within Nichiren Shu, we know we got like this vast array of like superstitious people that love all the stuff, and then you got the real progressives, like the liberal minded guys, and then you got the ones that are really strict and the ones that are really open, like, hey, it's cool. You can be the four types of believers plus the other wise ones. You don't have to be in the box. Get out of the box. Is acting like a bodhisattva, and not everybody is acting like a Buddha. We all have the potential, but unfortunately we get stuck. Our fear makes us do bad things, and that's it's. I don't know. I was telling Michael before we started, it's really hard to wake up every day and to be positive. And it's like after 2 years of COVID, it's like, and people now are trying to go back out in the world, and it's like get back to normal and like forget all about the protocols and no mask and no nothings, and and people are getting COVID still, and like you go, what did we just do for 2 years? What sacrifices did we just make? What the blank, and it's like it can be super discouraging. So that's the message of chapter 18. Ever diligent. Don't give up. Don't give up. There, you will get benefits. The benefits are awesome, and share the practice as best you can, and it'll all flow back to us. And maybe over time we'll steer this crazy ship, toward a more, but the pure land, it's all happening right now. And anyways, Ruzbe.